Hello, all warriors of light and future warriors of darkness, and welcome back to another discussion video. Today we are going to be discussing something that I think a lot of people have been wondering ever since 1.0. Is Minfilia useless? First, a little background on our most notorious NPC. Minfilia Ward was born as Ashelia in Alamigo before fleeing with her father to Udal when she was a young child. We first see her as a little girl way back in 1.0 in Udal, where she was handed a basket of flowers by Flamine. We don't know anything about her birth mother, but we discover that her father, Waberton, was a spy for the Alamigan resistance, and had learned some dangerous secrets that forced him to flee from Alamigo with his young daughter. Shortly after arriving in Udal, her father saved her from almost getting trampled by a rampaging Gubu that escaped during a parade. But even though he saved her, he fell into a coma from his injuries before later dying. After that, Ashelia was taken in by Flamine, where she was well taken care of, at least until she learned that her new adopted mother was part of the group who had released the Gubu who killed her father. Even though it was an accident, she aligned herself with Neilfren, attempting to find a way to bring her father back from the dead. The plan failed after Neilfren was killed by a mysterious robed man. With no other place to go, she eventually decided to return to Flamine. She lived with her adopted mother, who taught her everything she would need to know to survive, and eventually was able to forgive her for her part in her father's death. She had also grown close to Thancred during that time, who had taken on the role of both a friend and maybe a sort of surrogate father of sorts. See, he blamed himself for her father's death, believing that he could have prevented the Gubu's attack somehow, despite the fact that he had nothing to do with it escaping. Thancred seems to have made it his mission to look after her, paying her visits from time to time, and even given her the new name of Minfilia to protect her from any enemies of her father. From the Tales of the Calamity series, we also discover that she was introduced to Louisoix by Thancred, when it's discovered that she has the Echo. After learning about the Echo, she works to create the organization of the Path of the 12, a group of Echo users who want to use their gifts to better the world. During all this, even though she's considered to be pretty wise and diplomatic for her age, she was often looked down by her own followers. Here, this already shows that she has a bit of a shaky leadership in the beginning. Shortly before the Battle of Carteneau, she met with Louisoix face-to-face when he warns her that if he doesn't return, she must be prepared to lead others in his stead, and to await one who bears the light and shares her gift of the Echo, where we can only assume he was talking about the future Warrior of Light. After the Calamity, it's assumed that most of the people in the Path of the 12 were killed. She meets with Thancred and the other future Scions from their organization that was founded by Louisoix, known as the Circle of Knowing. During the next 5 years, they combined the remaining members of their two organizations to create the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. During this time, she seems to have grown more into a respectable leader. 5 years after the Calamity, though, when the Warrior of Light, either a new one or a returning warrior, are brought to the Waking Sands, we meet her with the others. For returning characters, because Minfilia is blessed with the Echo, she was the first to recognize the Warrior of Light, the adventurers who was saved by Louisoix, while all the others had forgotten their names and faces. She explains that Louisoix's spell wiped everyone's memories from the survivors. After that, we're directed for a number of missions before she was taken hostage by Livia sus Julis and taken to Castrum Sentry with Papalimo, Urianje, and Tataru. She appeared to have been a lot tougher than she looks, though, because after what we can presume to be weeks of torture, she refused to cooperate with the Garleans and even threatens to kill herself if her friends are harmed. After being rescued, she helps to convince the leaders of the Eorzean Alliance to reject Gaius' offer to rid the realm of primals once and for all, before helping to come up with a plan to destroy the weapon. During the rest of the 2.0 series, she is seen often, and we are given many more tasks from her, including from fighting primals to even finding her adopted mother, who had disappeared shortly before the Calamity. But even though she's seen often enough throughout the series, all the way up to 2.5 before the fall, where she was captured by Nabrialis and soon rescued by the Adventurer a second time, and even up to the final scene in Udal, where they were betrayed by the Crystal Braves and framed for Nanimo's supposed assassination. One by one, the Scions are forced to remain behind to allow her and the Warrior of Light to escape through a tunnel beneath the city. Just before they escape, though, Minfilia receives a message from Hydaelyn to return to Y'shtola and Thancred. She instructs the Warrior of Light to go on without her before she ends up caught up in Y'shtola's flow spell, eventually brought to the Mother Crystal in the Ethereal Sea. That's where she offers up her own body for the weak Hydaelyn and becomes the Word of the Mother. Now, it's going to be a long time before we see her again, not until 3.2, where we're transported to the Ethereal Sea through the Anti-Tower, where we discover Minfilia's new existence as the Word of the Mother. She tells us more about Zodiark and urges us to stop the Ascians before using what strength she had left to return us to Eorzea before she dissipates. Now, it's not going to be until 3.4 where we find out that Urianger manipulated both the Scions and the Warriors of Darkness into a fight, where they used the Crystals of Light to transport them to the Ethereal Sea and kind of put the pieces of Minfilia back together. Minfilia agrees to travel to the Warrior of Darkness's world as Hydaelyn's avatar in order to save it from the flood of light that threatens to destroy it, despite knowing that she will likely never be able to return to Eorzea. She bids farewell to her friends and thanks Flamine for everything she did for her before leaving with the Warriors of Darkness. She's one of those characters where you either love her or you hate her. Most people do seem to go for the latter. In all honesty, I'm not the biggest fan of Minfilia either, but at the same time, I can't say that I hate her. I'm okay with her coming back in 5.0, even though I was a little disappointed. We haven't seen or heard from Minfilia since she left with the Warriors of Darkness way back in 3.4 Soul Surrender. And apart from some NPCs mentioning her once in a rare while, it's already been well over an entire expansion since she last made an appearance. So, what's with all the hatred? I think that the reason people disliked her so much was because she was just seen as eye candy. Despite the fact that we see her so much in the 2.0 series, she really isn't doing much. I mean, if it were up to me, the Scions would probably fall apart in a matter of days. Sure, we have all this talk about how she did so much for the Scions behind the scenes, and I'm well aware that Minfilia is supposed to be good at her job and is a vital part of the Scions. She's there to keep everything under control, and I know that if it were up to me, I couldn't do a job like that. But here's the thing, we don't see it happening. As far as most were concerned, she just stood at the Waking Sands or the Rising Stones and told us to come back when she could have told us over the Link Pearl. A lot of people complain over going back every time she needs us. People, if you are having trouble trying to get to Vesper Bay in a quick way, just teleport straight to Limsa and take the ferry there. It's very quick. But it's not really that's the problem. I don't think she's a bad character, I just think the problem is that she was poorly written. The hate comes more from us not seeing her doing much as a Scion than it does from her just being a bad character. Another character that was seen as bad back in 2.0 was Alphinaud, and I admit I was one of them because he just seemed like the spoiled little person who thought that he knew everything and thought that he could do everything better than anyone else. But he, at least, was seen performing political tasks so that we got a glimpse that he was useful to the team, doing the same thing as Minfilia, but on screen. I think that she was needed for the Scions during those first 5 years when they were otherwise leaderless with Louisoix's death, but after Alphinaud and the Warrior of Light joins the Scions, she sort of takes a back seat to them. It's said that she deals with political issues, makes negotiations, forming alliances, as well as studying up on and dealing with the primal threats. Well, Alphinaud was doing all of that after he arrived too, though it's stated that he was less effective at those tasks because he had no concept of money. To me though, what makes a good character is that they change throughout the story. That they become different characters at the end than they were at the beginning, but they still the same. They grow older, wiser, become better leaders, while still maintaining some of the better qualities they had at the start of the journey. The thing with Alphinaud, though, is that we get this massive character development with him in the expansion of Heavensward. He has grown in popularity over time because we see him grow to actually taking a major role in the next few expansions. He becomes wiser, more compassionate and understanding. His leadership qualities grow greatly, not to mention he can also defend himself. He and his sister become those characters who want to change for the sake of the team and the world. They want to pull their own weight, not to be carried by anyone. They don't want to be liabilities to the team, basically. They don't want to hold them back or drag them down. They want to grow stronger so that they can support them instead of the other way around. That is what makes these two so popular these days. But in Minfilia's case, she's pretty much the same from point A to point B. No offense, Minfilia, but knowing how dangerous the world is, could you not take some self-defense classes? You're seen carrying a knife all the time, but we never see you use it. Take a few private lessons from Thancred or the others. Come on, so you're not completely helpless. Some say that it's because she's more the brains behind everything, but here's the thing. She's not some highly educated scholar. She's not one of the Archons like the others. I mean, the other Archons all had educations in Charlian, but they're also trained fighters who can look after themselves in battle. I think that you could learn a little bit from them, Minfilia. I'm not saying that all leaders need to be this badass fighter, but they have to at least be capable enough that they aren't a damsel in distress. I mean, in the 2.0 series, we had to save her at least twice that I can think of, and the rest of the time we see her fretting and worrying from a place of relative safety. Despite all the cutscenes we get from her, there's very little character development compared to someone like Alphinaud. In fact, some people even see her as like Princess Peach, that everyone loves her for no reason and she exists only to get kidnapped. She's nice and caring, to be sure, but whenever it comes to fighting, she leaves that to the Warrior of Light, and when it comes to being a diplomat, she usually lets Alphinaud do it. At no time does she really show herself adept at anything other than giving orders, and even then, she often gets confused and conflicted on her decisions until someone else puts their 2 cents in. One scene in particular that I think a lot of people give her a lot of grief for is back in 2.1. She was very against the idea of moving from the Waking Sands, even though she knew that it would be for the best move for them all. But she doesn't want to leave Udall because of a rumor that her adopted mother might still be around. On one hand, I understand her feelings. Udall is her home, it has been since she came here, and she wants to hold on to hope that her adopted mother might still be out there somewhere. But here's the thing, people are saying that she's being selfish because she doesn't want to leave Udall. And in a way, they're right. She's risking their principles by remaining in Udall, even though she knows that it would probably benefit them in the long run if they move. And it's not until the Warrior of Light goes out to find Flamine and bring her back do this really spell out for her that this is the right thing to do. It's hard to name all of her skills and traits that warrant her as the leader of the Scions. She has a good heart, but well-meaning isn't good enough. There are some people who think that she's dead weight because we don't need a princess to rescue when the world is coming apart at the seams. Now, I get the impression from the writers is that they wrote her specifically to be a weak character with a strong will. But here's the thing. Weak characters can still be interesting and amazing people. Here, she doesn't have a strong will. It's just, she's weak and that's why she doesn't fight. Well, how about we have a few adventures with her as we were starting out? Go with her on several quests, even if they were just small side quests. We see her use her skills with the Beast Tribes, try to negotiate peace treaties with them, encourage us to work alongside them. Maybe this is how we could be introduced to the Beast Tribe dailies. In some ways, she was better seen in 1.0. She created the Path of the 12 organization all on her own and worked to help study the Echo and to protect those with it. But really, it all comes down to the fact that she was just poorly written. Because she was never seen doing anything, it gives us the impression that all she does is sit behind her desk all day while calling us back to the Waking Sands whenever something goes wrong. People actually prefer that Alphinaud took over her responsibilities because even though he made plenty of mistakes, he was still seen doing stuff. To sum it up, she appears to us to be a helpless character who needs protecting. Again, I'm not saying that every leader needs to be in command of an army or can break someone's neck with their bare hands, but they have to have certain characteristics to make them a good leader. It's easy to make someone in charge, but finding someone who can lead well and make good decisions for the good of the organization is difficult. I think they could have done her character a better job than how they did. And when she was called away by Hydaelyn, I think that the reason they did that was because they got so much complaints about her, and fans were happy to see her go because she was given a useful purpose. What people seem annoyed the most by is that, at this point, she's looked on with as much reverence as the Warrior of Light, but in different ways, because we had to work hard to earn ours. Well, it just feels like she was given that because the writers wanted it that way. In some ways, it feels that Thancred and Flamine both hold her up on a pedestal because they feel guilty that they unintentionally orphaned her. Though in all respects, I think that Thancred should hold a lot less of the blame in that one, but regardless, she's not the only person in this game who's had traumatic experiences. It's terrible what happened to her father, but she still had someone there willing to take care of her and raise her, so she had it a lot better than other characters we've seen. She needs to move on from that past and accept what happened when we've seen others who are dealt far worse hands in life and they soldier on because they must. It doesn't feel fair that she is holding other people down because of her own difficulties. Now that we know that she's coming back in 5.0, I don't want to be seeing her again with her giving all these cryptic messages about Hydaelyn and that we're going to be forced to protect her and rescue her all the time, or that we're going to be losing someone like Thancred as he sacrifices himself to protect her. No, I don't want that. I want to see her pulling her weight despite the fact she's in a child's body and is bound to have limitations. You can write interesting characters even if they are physically young or weak, but to make them just the person that we rescue all the time with no other personality is just lazy. I don't want another story like with Lisa's character in Stormblood. I was so disappointed in her role because they gave her such a big part in it, but she was another character who had a lot of issues and I generally lost interest in her. She had potential to be a great character, but they've written her in a poor way. So what do we need from this new Minfilia? To make a long list short, we need to see her have an important role and a focus point, something more than just the fact that she's stuck in a child's body and needs a protector, because that's what people hated about her up until now. I think that what we need now is to see her more of a leader role in 5.0 and onwards. We went to a lot of political meetings and negotiations along with Alphinaud and the others, so why not go further into that? Even if they're made into side quests or something, I think this would be good for them all. Having said that, in this form, I don't think she's going to be that strong and she will need protection for a time, but there are ways of doing that and making that character interesting at the same time. A Dark Knight protecting a child is something we've seen before, such as Sissel and Rydia from Final Fantasy IV, or Cid and Rael from the Dark Knight quests. As to why Minfilia is in the body of a child, well, I think a reasonable explanation is that she did have to give up her body at one point to Hydaelyn, and kind of had to create a new form for her. It could be due to Hydaelyn's weakened state, and this was the only form she could take on since it didn't use as much ether. Back in 3.2, we see her as the Word of the Mother, but she struggles to hold her form, and we see it seemingly shatter and vanish. But because of the energy she was given, Hydaelyn had grown strong enough that she didn't need Minfilia to speak for her anymore, and was able to allow her to return to the First Shard. As she did so, though, there was a very likely possibility she'd be forced to remain there forever. Now, there are two ways to look at this scene: that she will one day return to the Source World, as most people think, but it could also mean that she will one day return the favor in being there for us. Since the Warrior of Light had always been there for her and being her pillar of strength, she promises to return the favor for all that she's done. I always knew that before the story was done, we would see Minfilia again. But whether it would be allowed for her to return home or not was something I could never say. I can't say for sure what kind of role she's going to play in 5.0, only that she's supposed to be for Hydaelyn as what Elidibus is to Zodiark. Yet it appears that both she and we as the Warriors of Light are being attacked by Agents of Light for some reason. I'm still on the fence about the whole idea of us traveling to another world when we are still struggling to keep things from completely falling apart on the world of the Source. We haven't even seen places like the New World, Miracidia, Thanvar, Sharlayan, and Ishabard. With so many new places to go and explore, do we really want to travel to another shard right now? Especially when we see how difficult it is? I just have a hard time trying to see a way that we can travel from one world to the next as easily as teleporting. But we do know that Minfilia has traveled to the First Shard. Our companions are fallen unconscious, and when we try to track them down, we can't find them in any trace of Hydaelyn. We are seen in a world bathed in light and forced to become a warrior of darkness. Soulless seems to be making plans to leave the Empire for an extended period of time, and we know that they at least can teleport pretty easily between worlds. And when we are on the brink of another possible calamity, certainly not impossible. So looking at this, I think there is a chance that we may at least get a look at the world of the first. So if they come up with a reasonable mode of transportation, who knows? But then there's the possibility that this girl isn't even the real Minfilia. We could have someone who has the same name and maybe the same personality, but it could be somebody completely different. Maybe it could be like how we have Doctor Who and his many rebirths. He has the same name, but different faces, different personalities each time he regenerates. Maybe this girl is her, but she was reborn with no memories of the source world, her friends, or anything else really. So what do I think? Well, I think that this child Minfilia may be what represents the good part of Hydaelyn, or the good aspect to light, the non-destructive part at least. But when these agents of light trying to kill her because she's against this destructive ways, so maybe these creatures are actually part of an obsessious part of light, extremists who think that all traces of darkness need to be erased. But then there's the whole idea with Soulless. He's definitely planning something with the Black Rose, but I do believe that it's not going to be done here on the source. We know so little about Soulless, it's impossible to guess for sure what he's planning. In fact, we don't even know if his real name is Soulless. Most seem to think that he's this mysterious Emic Selk. Possible, but then why does he keep going by the name of Soulless? Then again, he is on the poster for the cover art along with Minfilia and a suspicious character whom we don't know anything about yet, so anything is possible. So, what would his plans be? I do think he has something planned for the first shard. Well, from what we know so far, the Scions have some control over which shard gets consumed. I think that they get one of the other shards primed for doomsday before causing a big calamity upon the source world. Which is why I think that Soulless is planning something to do with unleashing the Black Rose on the first shard. So these are just my thoughts, but if we were to have some kind of interdimensional travel, I think that he will be leaving the source and heading to the first shard to put a stop to Minfilia's efforts to prevent the first from falling to light. I think that he will be using the Black Rose poison to do something to the light, perhaps use it in a way that could poison Hydaelyn. This could also mean that the increase in light on the source world has nothing to do with the Warrior of Light, and that everything is coming to a head on the first shard. Minfilia, as the word of the mother, has mentioned that 7 times that Hydaelyn has failed. This was her final. Her final what? This makes it sound like Hydaelyn can't keep up and that if one more world falls, then it's the end of her. It's for this reason that she goes to the first to stop the flood of light. I think that her plan to stop the flood is going to go horribly wrong, but not because Minfilia messes up, but because Soulless does something to mess it up for her. So when all hell is going to go down on the world of the first, who is she going to turn to? The same person that Hydaelyn has turned to for help since the beginning. The Warrior of Light is Hydaelyn's champion, and Minfilia has said so herself that she is her pillar of strength. Who else could she possibly want to turn to? Anyway, those are my thoughts on Minfilia and her as a character. What do you all think? You agree with it? Are you a fan of Minfilia or a hater? Please let me know, and I hope that you're going to be looking forward to my next discussion video, which is going to talk more about the idea of traveling to another shard versus staying on the source world. So, until next time.
Blessed children, go forth and seek.